be getting up really early or staying up very late to attend this session, so thank you. So in this session, I will show you how to easily and effectively visualize data in SharePoint using our SharePoint 2013 app, BlackCompass Visualizer for SharePoint. So today, let me go back. So today, I will first give a very brief introduction to this app, and I will spend most of today's time demonstrating to you in the real live SharePoint 2013 environment, so you can see the app, how the app works in real time. So after the demonstration, I will talk about general principles you can apply to how to make data visualizations effective in the SharePoint context. I will talk about SharePoint specific factors. Also, I will talk about general principles you can apply in adding data visualization solutions. If you have any questions throughout this session, please feel free to type up your question into the webinar software. And towards the end of the session, I will try to answer as many questions as I can. So first, a very brief introduction to BlackCompass Visualizer. So this is a SharePoint 2013 app available from the Microsoft SharePoint App Store. So let me just quickly show you. As you can see here, we have a standard SharePoint 2013 environment. For those of you who are familiar with SharePoint 2013, you know you can add apps, and you can click on the SharePoint App Store. So right now, it's trying to contact the Microsoft-hosted SharePoint App Store. As you can see here, these are the apps in the store, and our app is on the first page. And also, you can use the search bar up here to find the apps you want. Let me go back to my slides here. So it's a SharePoint 2013 app, and it supports both SharePoint 2013 on-premise installation or Office 365. The biggest feature for this app is that it's designed to be easy enough to be used by the end user. So we understand currently, obviously, there's other BI products on the market, and there's even SharePoint charting solutions out there. But we feel that none of them are really easy enough to be used by the end user. So we feel like we really wanted to build an app that's easy to use, anybody can use. You don't have to be a developer or an IT professional to use this app. So it's very easy to use, and the type of visualization it offers are immersive and advanced. So all the graphs also has a self-update feature. I will demonstrate this feature in a minute, and basically when the underlying data changes in SharePoint, the graphs can gracefully update itself without page refresh. Also, we have included a webpack pack. By using this webpack pack, you are able to place graphs very easily on SharePoint pages as web parts. You can save and publish your graphs, and once it's published, you can share them with your team. Also, with another vendor, we offer a separate external data visualization package. By using this package, you can pull data from just about any data source, Oracle databases, SQL databases, CRM, to pull your line of business data into SharePoint and then visualize the data as native SharePoint data using our app. And last point here, being a SharePoint 2013 app, there is nothing to install on your server side. So this is a new platform enhancement by Microsoft. So if you run an older version of SharePoint 2013, 2010 or 2007, you will know that to buy any kind of SharePoint add-on products, you will have to download a server-side installation package and run the installation on the server side using admin privileges. And this approach causes problems when you upgrade your SharePoint farm or reconfiguring your SharePoint farm. So largely, Microsoft has now addressed this issue by offering the app model. With the SharePoint apps now you buy from the App Store, the app code will not run on your server. So you can keep your SharePoint server farm clean. Okay, so let me stop talking and start showing you how this app works. So as you can see here, I have a standard SharePoint 2013 environment. It is an on-premise installation of SharePoint. And once you have added the app, and BlackCompass Visualizer will appear as an icon here. So it doesn't really matter whether I'm using Office 365 or on-premise SharePoint. It will work exactly the same way. It just happens for this demonstration, I'm using on-premise installation. So let's click on the app and have a look at what's inside. So now you're inside of the app. As you can see, the URL has changed. And it's reminding you to create a new visualization. You need to launch the app from the ribbon from a SharePoint list or document library, or you can use a webpack, which I will demonstrate very soon. Let me go back to my SharePoint site. And let me start with this list. So in here I have a temperature measurement of 3 cities in the United States: New York, San Francisco, and Austin. And so there are number columns, and this is a standard SharePoint list. We have a measurement date, which is a date time column, and you can see the dates the measurement are done daily. So let's go ahead and visualize this data using our app. Because we have installed this app, now you can see this visualize icon on the ribbon. So let's go ahead and visualize this. As you can see here, we have 15 types of different graphs for different purposes, which I will demonstrate. I will not have enough time to demonstrate every single one in detail today, but I will demonstrate in enough detail that you will have a good understanding of the benefit and how this app works. It's reminding you are about to visualize the data from this list. So I can click on this link, and it's showing me the list I came from. So let's say I'm interested in drawing this data on a line graph. So let's click on line graph. So it asks very basic questions like what's X and what's Y, right? And in here I have also a shortcut link to remind you the list it came from, which is city temperatures, and the SharePoint view you are about to pull data from. For those of you who are familiar with SharePoint views, you know that you can create views in SharePoint lists. You can apply filtering and grouping and item limits in views. So in here, you can choose which view you want to pull data from. So for this graph, I'm going to leave the view as all items. I'm going to give this a title, city temp. I'm going to leave the auto refresh to the default value, which is every 10 seconds. I will show the auto refresh feature soon. For the line graph, I have 2 rendering mode. I can render the data row by row. In this rendering mode, every row in the SharePoint list will be a data point on the graph, or I can apply date time grouping. When I apply grouping, I can visualize a grouped data. For example, I can visualize the average. I can choose different mathematical operators here by week, something like this. But for this demo, I'm going to render the data row by row. The X is the measurement date, and the Y is New York. Let's go ahead and visualize this data. So this is my graph. As you can see here, the X-axis is the date. The Y-axis is the temperature. We have currently 1 data series on the graph, which is New York. And I have a master band down the bottom where I can zoom. I can scroll. Let's pretend for a moment we are only interested in the year 2012 data for New York. I'm going to move my master zoom band to begin 2012 and end at the end of 2012. Now I'm looking at just one region of the graph, and I can hover over, and it's going to show me the measurement on each date. Let me open up the configuration panel up the top and overlay another data series. So I'm going to compare the New York measurement with San Francisco. I'm going to choose a different color. I'm going to choose a green color. You can input your own custom code, color code down here, but it's nice to choose from a pre-made panel. And let me add one more data series, which is Austin. And let me change the color to a purple color. Now I'm going to apply my new configuration. And as you can see, 2 more lines has been added to my graph. I can still zoom and scroll as before. Now, because I have multiple data series on this graph, then now I can see a colorful legend down the bottom. It's reminding me the data series that's currently on the graph, and it's clickable. I'm going to click on New York, and that's going to remove the New York data series from this graph. I can also remove San Francisco. Now I'm only seeing one data series. I can also put them back. Okay, let me reopen the configuration panel. So once the graph renders, you can pretty much change all aspects of this graph by configuring live. For example, I can also change the visual range on the y-axis. As you can see here, the minimum is 19.2 and the maximum is 89.6. So these are the minimum and maximum value inside of the dataset and is dynamically picked up by the visualizer. So I can choose to override this. I can say now use 0 as a minimum and have maximum being 100. Actually, let's make it 120. So this range is more inclusive. Let me apply the new configuration. As you can see now, the y-axis has resized, and the maximum is 120, and the minimum is 0, and the line has reshaped itself to fit within this new scale. Also, I can change things like various aspects, like the look and feel. I can choose to click to show the data dot and to show the data labels and apply my new configuration. As you can see, the labels has been and the dot has been added to the graph. I can hover over and see what the measurement is for that date. Okay, so let me reload this same graph but apply daytime grouping. So I'm going to reload this graph and choose line graph again. I'm still visualizing the city temperature list, but this time I'm going to apply daytime grouping. So instead of showing the measurement day by day, I'm going to group down to the weekly level and show the average of New York for the weekly value. So I'm showing average temperature measurement per week. Here's my graph. As you can see, it looks a little bit different to the previous graph because now it's showing the weekly average value rather than the daily measurement row by row. So let me open up the configuration panel again. I can add another data series. Let's say I want to compare the average of New York with, let me add one more series, the average of San Francisco, and let me change the color to be red color, and I will apply now my new configuration. As you can see, another data series has been added to the graph. I can still use my master band to zoom and to scroll to focus on a different daytime range. I can still click on my colorful legend down the bottom, and this will dynamically add and remove data series. Let me reopen the configuration panel. Because now I'm applying grouping, I can have more flexible arrangement. For example, I can compare the average of New York with the median value of San Francisco. And let me apply the configuration. As you can see, the lines has been redrawn, so it shows the average compares to the median instead of the average compare with the average. As with all graphs, we can automatically refresh data from SharePoint. The default refresh rate is every 10 seconds. And with all graphs, once I'm happy with the graph, I can choose to save or publish this graph. Also, you can click on this icon called Graph Info. It's going to show you the list you are pulling the data from and the list view you are pulling the data from as well. So let me go back to my SharePoint site and show you the next graph type. I have another list here. It's showing me the population demographics in various states in the US. So the data structure is very simple. So we have a state column, which is a single line of text column, the total population for that state, and various age groups. Let's go ahead and visualize this data. So this time I'm going to use the histogram. Again, it's reminding you are about to graph data from the US state demographics list. I'm going to choose histogram. Again, as you can see, the configuration panel is very similar to the one before, but slightly different because it's a different type of graph. I'm going to leave the titles for this one. And again, you can apply grouping or render data row by row. I'm going to render the data row by row for this instance. And to make it very easy for the end user, you ask very basic questions like what is X, which is the state name, and Y. Let's pretend for a moment we're interested in the under 5-year-old age group to begin with. This is my histogram. I can also use the master band down the bottom to zoom, to scroll. Also, I can open the configuration panel and I can do things like sorting. For example, I want to see my data sorted by the y-axis, let's say from small to large. Let me apply my configuration. As you can see, the data is now sorted dynamically. If I take off the sorting, the data is going to appear as the order it appears in the SharePoint list. Let me open up the configuration panel again and add multiple data series. If you remember, this graph is now showing me this one age group. I would like to compare this age group with a different age group. Let's compare the under 5-year-old with over 85. Let me choose a different color. And let's add one more data series. Let's choose from 18 to 24. And let me apply my new configuration. As you can see, multiple data series now has been displayed on the same graph. I can still zoom. I can still change my region of focus. And in my down the bottom of the graph, I can still have this clickable legend. I can add and remove data series onto the page, like so. I would like to go ahead and save and publish this graph. I want to first give it a title and apply. As you can see, the title has been added. And I want to save this. Once you save, it becomes available in My Graphs. So My Graphs shows you all the graphs that's made by you. It's not visible to your team member just yet. Now I want to publish this. Once you publish, it becomes available in the published graphs where all your team member can see this graph you published. Or you can also see the graphs published by your team members as well. Let me leave this page and show you the next graph type. I have a SharePoint list here. I want to show you how to place SharePoint data on Google Maps with geolocation type of data. Let me show you this list. This is showing me various Victorian microbreweries here in Victoria, Australia. So we have first column is the name of the microbrewery and the full address, and also for demonstration purposes, I have inputted the longitude and latitude and coordination of this location. Also, I have a capacity column that shows you the capacity of this facility. You do not have to have the geolocation for this to work, but you must either have the full address or the geolocation for Google Maps to locate your address. Let's go ahead and visualize this data. I'm going to choose Google Maps here. for this graph, I'm going to choose locate by address. If you remember our graph, we have the second column is the full address. So I'm going to choose full address here. Also, I can use a different mode. For example, if I don't have an address, I only have longitude and latitude, I can use this. Or I have the geo coordinates, but they are in one column. I can specify how they are delimited in the same column. But for this one, I'm going to use full address. I'm going to place the label on the graph to be the name of the facility. And I'm going to leave the size of the marker and the color coding once the graph renders, so you will have more context. So you can see now various rows of data is now being placed on Google Maps. So let me open up the configuration panel. And now I want to use the size of the marker to represent the capacity of the facility. So the more capacity it has, the bigger the bubble is. So I'm going to choose capacity to represent the size of each marker. And I want to also automatically color code, so I can choose the color code to be automatic mode, and I can color code by the name. So each different facility will have a different color. Let me go ahead and apply my configuration. So as you can see now, the size of the marker represents the capacity of this facility, and the color is, each color represents a different facility. Now let me go back to my SharePoint site to show you the next type of graph. I have another SharePoint list here. It's showing us Bill Gates' donations. The data structure is very simple. So each time a donation is made, we have a grant, the grant title, the organization is going to, how much, when they are made. Also, to show you the power of using SharePoint calculated column, I have a grant year column down here. This is not a real column, but it's a calculated column. It dynamically pulls the year out of the grant date column. For those of you who are familiar with calculated column, you'll know in SharePoint, you can specify dynamic columns that would determine its value from another column based on a formula. So basically, this is specific. So this column, grant year, will say whatever the year is of the grant date. So let's go ahead and visualize this data. So it's reminding me I'm about to visualize data from the Bill Gates donation list. So I want to stay with this list and visualize it in many different ways. So let me first show you these two graphs. We have the item explorer and the item universe. These two graphs are what we call data explorers. They are used in a situation where you don't know what you're looking for and you just want to explore the data a little bit. I'm going to use the item universe first. Here's my graph. I want to, again, I can choose to pull data from different SharePoint views. I have 4 views made for this list. I can choose to pull data from any of this view. But for this one, I want to pull all the data in. So I'm going to use all items. And I'm going to give it a title, so Bill Gates donations. And I want to, let's say right now I'm interested in the size of the donation. So I'm going to choose the total amount column to represent the size of each balloon and the color code by different organization. So each different organization will receive a different color. Let me go ahead and visualize this data. So this is my item universe graph. So as you can see, the size of each bubble is representing the size of the donation. Once you click on a bubble, it's going to show you that one row of SharePoint data behind this bubble. I have a clickable legend down the bottom because I chose to color code it. So the first thing I want to do is immediately I want to place the actual donation amount on the bubble. So on the look and feel, I'm going to choose the total amount as the text label. As you can see, the text label has been added to each balloon. Let me reopen the configuration again and apply some kind of grouping. I know there's 3 years worth of data in this list, 2008, 2009, and 2010. I'm going to group by the grant year. If you remember, just now I explained that the grant year is a dynamically calculated column based on the year of the donation date. Let me go ahead and apply my new configuration to this graph. As you can see, each balloon has moved into the correct position. So this is 2010, 2009, and 2008. So let me show you how data can be updated gracefully from all graphs. First, let me change the auto refresh rate from every 10 seconds to every 2 seconds, so we don't have to wait for very long. And I'm going to click on this balloon. For example, this is a $40 million donation to an organization. I'm going to click on this link. It's going to link me to the SharePoint list item that's behind this balloon. As you can see, it's a $40 million donation to this program. So I'm going to pretend for a moment this donation is not made in 2009, but rather in 2008. Let me click the Save button and quickly go back to my graph. As you can see, I have not refreshed this graph. This bubble has moved automatically by itself to the right position because the underlying data has changed. So let me do it again. I'm going to click on this link. It's going to take me to the one row of data behind this bubble. So this time I'm going to put this back to 2009. And also I want to change, let's pretend it's no longer a $40 million donation, it's a $100 million donation. I'm going to save and quickly go back to my SharePoint graph. As you can see, not only the bubble has moved into the right position, the size has changed because the underlying data has changed. I'm going to publish this. Now it's available on the published graphs. So let me switch the graph type. I'm still visualizing the same data, Bill Gates' donation, but this time, let's say I'm no longer very interested in the donation amount, but I don't know what I'm looking for. I want to visualize the data and explore the data. So I'm going to use the item explorer here. Again, it asks very simple questions. Would you like to place a text label on each item? Yes, that's the grant title. And the color code as the organization again. So this is my explorer. So every row of data is one rectangle on this graph. I can click on them. It's going to show me that one row of data behind it. The first thing I notice is some of the texts are being cut off. So I want to increase the width of the rectangle. So I can go and open up the configuration panel. And on the look and feel, I'm going to increase the item width from the default 160 pixels, say, to 220 pixels. Let me apply my new configuration. Now everything has resized in real time. Let me open up the configuration again. Let's say now I want to explore my data by grouping, sorting, and filtering. Let me try grouping first. Again, I want to group my data by the year. Let me apply. As you can see here, each row of data has gracefully moved to its right place because this is 2010, 2009, and 2008. I can remove the grouping now, so all the data now will go back to the same place. Let me show you sorting. Let's say I'm interested in sorting by the total amount as the number from, say, large to small. Let me apply the configuration. Now, obviously, the first one is the largest donation. Also, I can filter. I can run a filter I can run a condition such as only show me the items where the total amount as a number is greater than, say, 5 million. Let me apply my configuration. As you can see, many data rows has disappeared from the graph because there's only a handful over $5 million. I can remove the filter, and all the data now are back. Okay, let me now go back to my SharePoint and show you the next graph type. So in here I have let me find the list I'm looking for. In here I have another list. This is showing an imaginary department donation. So let's imagine for a moment we're running a donation competition where $10,000 is the goal. We have the department, how much money they've raised so far, and how many people are working in those departments. Let's go ahead and visualize this data. Now I want to use the radar graph. So let me show you instead of explaining it. So we want to show, it's like a race to a goal, isn't it? We want to show the relative positions in relation to a goal. So we want to use the distance to the center. We want to use the donation amount to represent the distance to the center. And also we want to use the department headcount to represent the size of each dot. And the label, of course, is the department, and color code, let's color code by the department. So the visual range, remember, our goal is from 0 to 10,000. And in this case, we want to invert axis, so the larger the number, the closer it is to the center. So what does this mean? That means, you see, the outer ring is 0, the inner is 10,000, and the relative position shows how closely this department it is to the goal. And the size of the bubble represent the how many people work in that department. I can still click on my legend to add and remove bubbles on the graph. Let me show you one more graph. So let me go back to the Bill Gates' donations list. Let's say for now we're no longer interested in how much donations are or to explore the data. We're interested in when they're made. Let's go ahead and visualize this data. We're going to draw the data on a timeline. So we have a grant date, and let's use the grant title as the label and color code by organization like before. So this is showing us the data on a timeline. So I can zoom. So this is basically showing a date-time continuum. Each dot is a donation. I can move this data dot up and down. I cannot move it left or right because that would change the meaning of the data. I can click on it. It's going to show me that one row of data in the SharePoint list. Also, I can see down the master band here, there's a lot of donation that's made in this region. So I can zoom into this region. I can use my mouse wheel to zoom further. Being a date-time continuum, you can almost zoom indefinitely. Pay attention to the labels down the bottom. As I zoom in more, they become more and more granular. Now it's down to the date and time level. I can use my mouse wheel to zoom back. As you can see, now we're back in dates, weeks, or months. So let me go back to the SharePoint list. And now, just now, I have visualized the Bill Gates' donation list using many different type of graphs. Now I want to place some of the graphs on a web part page as a web part. Now if I go back into my, my app, on the published graphs, I can see I have 2 published graphs. I can click on either one of them. It's going to take me to that graph. For this one, let me take off the grouping and make some changes to the graph. So also I want to remove the color legend because I simply do not need them in a web part. Let me republish this. Let me open up a new tab, and we have a standard SharePoint web part page here where I can add a new web part. I'm going to put the page into editing mode and add a web part in this region. As you can see, BlackCompass Visualizer is one available web part you can add. Let me add this. It's asking you to copy and paste the URL of your saved or published graph. So in here, you can even paste the URL from a graph in another SharePoint site collection or in even another SharePoint file. Let me go back to my tab here and copy this URL. And now I'm going to paste it here and load this graph. Let me exit this page from editing mode. Now, as you can see, my graph has been placed on this page as a web part. By using web part, you can create very dynamic dashboard-looking pages right in SharePoint using web parts. Okay, so let me go back to my slides here. And now I want to talk about principles. I'm almost running out of time. I want to talk briefly about principles in how to make visualizations in SharePoint effective. I will first talk about SharePoint specific factors, and then I will talk about general factors. So to make data visualization effective in SharePoint, first you have to have good data. The graphs are only as good as the data you provide to it. So first thing you need to do is clean up data in your list or document libraries. So let me go back and show you the Bill Gates' donation list. As you can see, we have a single line of text, we have number columns, we have date time columns, we have calculated columns. So make sure you don't have we have seen some clients that make sure you don't have a situation where everything is one single line of text. If you have a numeric value, make sure you have a number column. If you have a date time column, make sure you have date time data. So also avoid using rich text columns for data visualization in SharePoint, because when you use rich text columns in SharePoint database actually stores the HTML markup rather than the real value. So it doesn't display well in visualizations. Just now I demonstrated how we can use calculated columns in SharePoint, and I also demonstrated using SharePoint list views. Actually, let me re-demonstrate this point. So in this list, Bill Gates' donations, I have 4 views. Let me go ahead and visualize this using a different view. I'm going to use the item universe like you have seen before, but this time I'm only interested in big donations. I made this view earlier to show me the donations that's bigger than $6 million. I'm going to use the total amount and the color code like before using organization. Here you can see it's the same data set, but now the data has been filtered because I'm pulling data from a different view. I'm only seeing a handful. So also you can graph data from multiple lists by using a lookup column. So this app is based on list and document library data. At the end of the day, you still have to visualize one list or one document library, but you can match data from a different list by using a lookup column. Also, the last point on the SharePoint part of good data visualization principle is try to visualize report data rather than raw data. We have seen examples where the client has many thousand rows of transactions of raw data. That's not ideal. What you really want is to use tools like SQL and analytics services to crunch the data and produce some kind of report data and visualize that instead of visualize the raw data itself. It may work, but it's not the ideal situation. So the second part of good principles in good data visualization is good graphs tells a story, and it provides the user with a context. So you want to label, you want to always provide a title and a subtitle. And so you want to create a situation where the user can look at your graph and understand what they are looking at instead of just a chart. The next point is maybe try to separate analytic data and the presentation. Also, that's somewhat related to the point I was making before, that if you have raw transactional data, use some kind of analytic tool to produce a report first, then present the report using this app. So separate the analysis of data and the presentation of data. I've seen too many BI tools that trying to do two things at the same time, but the end result is less than ideal. So the last point is try to provide a conclusion or the next actionable step in your graph. A good visualization will always leave the user to do something or to look for something or provide some kind of conclusion. So a very quick summary. So BlackCompass Visualizer is an easy-to-use app from the SharePoint App Store. It supports both on-premise SharePoint 2013 or Office 365. All the graphs has a feature to be able to update itself when the underlying data changes. And as a user using this app, you can leverage standard SharePoint features, powerful features like views, calculated columns, lookup columns. You can save and publish and share your graphs. And also, if you're interested in visualizing your line of business data that's not in SharePoint, make sure you ask us about the external data visualization package we offer. Okay, so this is the end of my webinar. I will try to answer some questions. And I'm almost out of time, but if you can visit our website, www.blackcompass.net, for general information, licensing information, and product documentation. And also we have set up an Office 365 site, which is a live demo site you can log in to have a play with this product. So I will address, I think I've